Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Divided, Survived, and Thriving, where I get to have a candid chats about turning painful process of divorce into a positive force in your life. I am Laila Aitken, a divorcee, a divorce coach, and the founder of Split FYI, an online divorce community rich in resources and information for anyone going through divorce or separation. So there were times when I thought the experience would break me, but it didn't. And I came out stronger than ever with a newfound purpose to help others who are going through the same thing. I am so grateful to have these conversations with survivors of divorce who are willing to share stories and how they overcame their battle scars to achieve peace and purpose in their lives. Divorce helped empower them and taught me what it meant to be my own best advocate. I hope we can do the same for you. And without further ado, it is my great pleasure to introduce to you the one and only Leigh Wallett.
Oh, so good to be here. Hi.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I think of you, and then I'm going to let you take it away. Because for me, Leigh is, I'm so sorry. Oh, that is my daughter's phone. Okay. It happens sometimes.
It's part of the whole setup. That's cool.
Oh my God. Exactly. The COVID podcast. So you are, for me, a very strong and soulful, just everything that you do. You're a champion of so many people's businesses. You're an artist yourself. You are just a fantastic soul to work with, by the way. You smile all the time, which I love. And I've had the pleasure of working with you. You bring positivity to everything you do. Although I know that things haven't been as positive in your life, Leigh has managed to take stock of her needs and desires during her divorce and use all what she learned about herself to quit her job and explore the world. So today we will hear her story and how she put pieces back and rebuilt her life. And now doing what she loves most. Leigh, thank you so much for being here and sharing your story. So let's start from the beginning.
Great. What a great intro. I love that. I feel like so boosted hearing those great thoughts. So thank you.
Especially with my kid's alarm going off. That's amazing. That's it.
So do you want to tell you a little bit about how I got started?
Well, I think so. For me, I think the first thing is where we can start is really, how the divorce, how did it happen? How did it lead to it? And what led you to that? Was it something that you knew that just wasn't working inside, or was it something that was sprung upon you? Shed some insight about where you were at in your process of your life when the divorce happened.
Okay, thanks. So yeah, for me, it was, I guess it was more of an identity crisis if I look back. And it's interesting you brought in that like artist element of my story, because actually like getting back into my artistic and creative side was how I helped myself redefine who I was, because I really lost myself in my marriage. I think I took to heart the advice that I needed to compromise too far. And I kind of just made it all about my ex-husband, and I lost the person who I was. And I just woke up in my life and thought, this is not what I want. This is not for me. And so it was in my early 30s. I was 32. I'd been in a relationship for 10 years. So from 22 to 32. So we'd grown up together. And I think it was just one of those cases of growing apart. And I think when we were younger, things were easier because there was less. I really think it actually comes down to a lot of finances. Like we didn't have a lot of money. So our lives were really simple and small and like kind of easy to manage. Right. And as we both like grew in our careers and got promotions, that's when we really like our values just didn't match up. And suddenly we were living these lives and I was like, this is not what I want. Right. So I think that was the turning point for me. And then I had to figure out what it is I did want, because I didn't know who I was like 10 years later after this relationship. Right. The very first thing I did was actually start getting back into art. And I was like, okay, let me redefine my identity and I want to be an artist. So that was like the first step.
I love that. I love that. I can see that. Well, you're very
Yeah.
passionate about this. So I'm glad that that was your calling. That's an interesting concept because a lot of people, are in marriages or are in relationships where they don't even realize it until they wake up one day and they are too afraid to leave the situation. Right. There is a lot of fear around that. People do become identified by either their relationship or their work. Many times we do lose that self and we don't know who we are. Right. We've all had bouts of it, I'm sure. You can't be in your late 30s and not have it. At some
Yeah.
point it's happened to you. So after leaving or after deciding, okay, I need to find myself again and redefine who I am. I mean, that couldn't have been easy though, because you've built a life for 10 years with somebody. Even though you were younger, it still doesn't matter. It's somebody it's part of you.
Totally. It
Part
was,
of
yeah,
you.
it was really hard. And it's taken a long time. I've been divorced now coming on 3 years. And it's been such a process. And actually it's been interesting during COVID because this is the first time I've almost really been forced to settle down. So within those 3 years since I've left, the art was more of a passion of mine. That was like redefining my identity. I did that as a hobby on the side, but I did courses, and the way I got into it was through life coaching. So I found a life coach and set a goal, and my goal was to exhibit my art at a gallery. So I had this really beautiful experience of what's possible when you like question your beliefs and challenge yourself. So that was happening outside of work, and then in my job, at the same time I got divorced, I definitely considered quitting my job and leaving London where I was living at the time. But I decided to stay because I just thought, okay, let me have some stability and some security while I'm going through this change and just take like small steps, even though I wanted to change everything all at once.
Uh-huh.
Um, but I couldn't settle. I still felt very unsettled, still being in London and figuring out like what my new life looked like. Um, and so eventually last year I left my job and I took a sabbatical from my work, and then I started my own coaching practice this year, and I was going to be nomadic and travel the world until COVID happened, and I happened to be back in South Africa, in the country I'm from. And that has been one of the blessings of this time. Like, it's been a really challenging time, but one blessing has been being forced to be in one place, be grounded, and actually I feel like I'm rebuilding my life in a way that I haven't in the last 3 years. So it has been a long journey, and I think but I feel within those 3 years, I feel so much more grounded in myself. It's easier to make decisions. It's easier to set goals and achieve things. And I think now I'm like, just keep moving my vision of what I want. So like it gets bigger and bigger, but it feels inspiring and motivating and like I can achieve it. So it's been a real learning journey.
Well, part of it, I think, is when you stop. It's like, I always say this. I said, listen, you always have to do what is calling for you to do when you're having such a life shift like divorce, because, and an identity shift, right? You're a married woman, your whole idea while you're married is, okay, we're going to start a family. We're going to have this, we're going to, make money and buy a house. And, the vision is so different. All of a sudden that whole vision change, your identity. And then you started questioning your career and what you were doing. That was your stability in many ways. So all these things were stable in your life. You're like, okay, let me shake it up. Right?
Yeah.
Move around the world, and then figure it out. And I think part of that movement, I think, is because, and then a lot of people say, oh, people just escape. I say, no, 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 that's not escapism. Sometimes you need that movement. It's like, I always look at it as when I need to think, I need to walk. Sometimes I need to just move, literally need to move so I think better. I'm, I don't know, things come to me in a better light when it happens. So sometimes in movement, when you're not stagnant, it just starts getting the juices flowing, right? And then it also helps you heal, because that is also part of it. It's like part of the healing process in your case. Like everybody has their own different ones, but is letting go of that identity of that what you were supposed to have, the children, the house, with your husband, somebody you knew and grew up with. Heal from that, and then also heal from the fact that you're like, this isn't good enough. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I want more. I want to do something different. Right. So
Totally.
in movement, I love that you did that. I love that you went around, and I love the fact that COVID was your blessing, because actually you can only do that for so much. I mean, let's face it,
Yeah.
it's like now you found yourself. All right. So tell me that, and let's, this is candid. So I just
Mm.
want to understand, like, okay, you made a decision, but how hard was it to get over, you know, the relationship? Let's
It
face
was,
it. It's like, that's the
yeah.
hard, right?
And it's so funny because when I was in it, I was like, I'm very goal orientated, which might come up quite a lot, but I liked like time frames and deadlines. I did the same with COVID. I was like, I'm imagining, well, 3 months we'll check in, it'll be better, and then it's just not like that. And the divorce was similar. It's like, I kind of kept thinking, I'll just, by this date I'll feel better. I think because I left in January, like I moved out of our house, and I was like, by spring, so that was winter time in London.
Yeah.
It's like, by spring I'll bloom. Like I had this imagery in my mind of
I
how,
love
like, 4 months later I'll come back. It did not happen in spring. Like it took, I think it was probably there was a turning point I remember about a year after the divorce, where I had this insight that I was like, I was still really attached to my ex-husband's emotions and his happiness, and I wanted him to be okay.
Right.
And there was a point where I realized, I was just, thinking, well, I just want Andy to be happy, and that was almost still my identity, being attached to him.
Mm-hmm.
And probably also a bit of an identity of being a good person, and maybe
Right.
something around the guilt of leaving, and like making myself feel better by hoping that he was okay. And I just realized, like, I've got to detach from his emotions. Like, he's his own person, I'm my own person. This is the entire point of separating.
Right.
So that was a real turning point of like actually letting even the idea of him being okay out. And that was like, I think that was about a year in. But I think it was probably it took about 2 years until it stopped being so much. My identity over those 2 years was a divorced woman. Like I identified as being divorced. Now I don't think about it. Like I think there was a turning point probably around 2 years where now it's like, it just doesn't, I'm my own person, completely defined in my own terms.
No, it was a catalyst for you. It was a catalyst for
Right.
another new beginning, which is amazing. Instead of that, it's your identity, which is great.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the whole reason why I get to talk to people like you, because I just enjoy it so much, because sometimes even when you're in it and you're going through it, you don't even see like how much you've accomplished and what a blessing that divorce was, right? And it's very difficult because like I say, there's so many different types of divorces. So it's not one side or a separation, and sometimes you have kids involved and sometimes you have so many. So it's not a smooth sailing, easy road, but there is always a blessing in the end. Whenever it comes to you, whether it's 1 year in, 2 years in, 10 years in, it doesn't matter, but it will come, but you will see it, I always tell people that. But I love that you approached it like you do when you're with your business, because it's actually what you're so good at. I mean, I know that you helped me even do that. It's like, you took it and you're like action and goals, and yep, by this I'll be over it. And by this,
Exactly.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so then let's move on, because I think this is a really good time to segue into what you do and how did that turn into, you've taken a bit of your creativity, you've taken a lot of your creativity, and then you've taken, what you did, your career, and you've meshed it all together. And so please share how, and your travels and the influences, tell us a little
Yeah.
bit about that.
So I ended up having that like parallel path where I was in my corporate job. I ended up working as a coach. So I was a team coach, and then I like supported a team of coaches who were helping to transform and modernize the business I was working in. So I did a lot of travel, and I worked with people around the world. I worked with a lot of consultants and coaches. And then in my personal life, I got I had a lot of therapy, and then I also had a life coach who was helping me with those other goals, like my artwork. And it was such a combination. So it was like all these influences of me questioning what I want from my life, what I value, what I see success as, like those big questions. And then it was the actual practical experience where I really loved this work of coaching and seeing like how much it was supporting anything. Like the people I was working with when I was in my corporate job were like data scientists, there was construction projects, It was like a range of different types of work, but all of them were just becoming way more effective. They were enjoying their work more, they were delivering faster, things were just like, it was having such a huge impact. And I was working with teams from like Aberdeen to Jakarta, like it didn't matter the cultural background, everyone was having this really positive experience of working in more collaborative ways. So I really loved that work. And then I also realized I don't want my whole life to just be working, because I was working a lot. Like I was working, because of all the travel, a lot of my weekends were taken up. I didn't have a lot of free time. So I thought I need to still define a life that is something that I want to be living every day. It can't just all be about work. So the first step was to take that sabbatical and just take a step back altogether and say, what does my life look like if I'm not just being productive and on this treadmill? And that was pretty uncomfortable, actually. Like I was in these beautiful places. I was in Spain. I was in San Sebastian, which is this like heavenly little town with 3 beaches and like the best Michelin star restaurants, the best food in Spain. And every day I was like feeling so guilty. I'm like, I'm not working. I'm not being productive. Like I just really struggled to let go. But that was good for me to challenge my beliefs and my identity. And then in January this year, I started my own coaching practice. So I thought, let me apply everything that I've learned, helping other teams, and apply that to my own work, start my own business. And then I've been helping mostly female solopreneurs get set up. And I didn't have a niche audience, but it's turned out I've worked with mostly new mothers who wanted to start their own businesses.
Love
and
that.
It's been amazing. And with it, so they have loads of obviously time constraints, like lack of sleep, but a lot of them have had the desire to have their own identity also, like along with being a mother, but they want to be doing work that they're passionate about. And so I've been using the same techniques I used with corporate teams, helping them become super productive and highly efficient, and helping young mothers who need like even more those skill sets because their time is so constrained. And they've been like launching their businesses within like a space of 6 weeks. They've been going from like an idea to getting up and running. And it's been amazing. So it's been a really, really beautiful year. And I was going to be nomadic, but I'm really grateful that I've been grounded in Cape Town and building my business here. So
yeah, I think everything happens for a reason in so many ways, right? And so, we all know that. And I think that, like we had said before, I think sometimes it's great to have that walking, that running, that whatever you're doing, that movement. And then sometimes you need to take that movement and then sit down with it all and be like, okay, let's suss it out and let's do this, And I kind of, what's interesting is this, it's like, I work with so many different types of divorces, and people are going through so many different stages of their divorce as well. But I really like not as maybe as methodical as you did it, like, okay, by December, I'll be over it. But I do like that you actually, I know, funny enough, I know you could laugh at that and go, yeah, that's silly of me to think that, but actually by doing something like that, it does make you move on. So I love that vision, like you are doing when you help mothers, out of the gates going, okay, I have this idea. I want to do something for my life. I don't want to just be the mom, I'm more than this, but I do need support and I need to have that help, that vision on how I'm going to get there. Or if I've got the vision, but I really need to make sure I know how to get there. Right. So it's the same thing, like having that vision, even when you're going through the divorce, is so fundamental. I always say that. So yeah, it might be silly to be like, okay, by March, I'm going to be over it, but it's kind of actually a great thing to put in the atmosphere, right? It's kind of like, all right, let me put a calendar by this date, around this date or whatever it is that I'm going to feel a lot better about this situation. I'm not going to be thinking those things. It allows yourself that time and that space to heal. And then it gives you a goal and sets you a goal to be like, okay, I'm going to be over it by then. It's okay.
Yeah. And I think what I like, and you're right, I do apply that to my business. I work in a similar way. But what it also helps is that you can then figure out, if you have that endpoint, it's easier to like reverse engineer and figure out what are the steps I'd need to take to get there. So even if you haven't, like I didn't meet my goal by spring, but I'd made huge progress. I'd done a bunch of stuff and I could like tangibly point to it and say, well, I've done these things. This is what's working for me. This is what's not. So it really gave me a roadmap. And I was able to then build further steps on that. I was like, okay, let me set my next goal and see what happens. So you just are way more like conscious in that approach where you are learning as you go, and you can assess where you're at and know, like, I like to also put it on a scale. Like if this is 10 out of 10, my ideal vision, what number would I put myself at?
Right.
And even if I move from a 5 to a 6, at least I know, like, okay, I'm closer to a 10. What does it take to go from a 6 to a 7? So it's that like incremental approach that it was super helpful for me. And it's not just about like achieving the goal. It's just about making sure you've got steps that you're taking to move forward.
There's movement. And in fact,
Right.
and you know, and I towards it. And I, you know what, we had talked about this earlier too. How do you deal with time management and all of this? Because now you're saying you're working with new moms and their time is very limited. And I know that. And you know, I'm not a new mom, but my daughter at, you know, age 12, nearly 12, I mean, wow, it, you know, sucks as much energy as when she was really little out of me in a different way. Right. So what's your advice on that? Because even those going through a divorce, it's like a lot of what I hear in my feedback is from clients and community is that, you know, I don't even have the time to think about starting a business. I don't have the time to think about my career. I don't have the time because I'm going through a divorce. I'm going through this. And it's like, that's one of the time is like the number one excuse that we all use. I mean, I use the same, I always use it. So could you shed some light on that? Because I know you're pretty good with all that.
I try, like, yeah, I do enjoy coming up with like productivity and ways of working. And I think what's really interesting is that actually by having more constraints, it can really help you focus and be more effective with your time. So it's not about having a lot of time. It's just about like almost creating pockets of time and being really clear on what you want to achieve in that space. So I do a few things. Probably one that's quite like simple to implement is just time blocking, like creating dedicated chunks of time to do work in and knowing. So if you say like from, you know, 9 to 10, I'm going to do content for social media or whatever the work is that you need to do.
Right.
And so a lot of the time with the new mothers that I work with, they're not even working consistently every day. They'll have one day of the week where like their child is going to their grandmother. And so they know on a Wednesday, I have these hours, and they define in advance, what do they want to achieve within those hours?
Right.
And that's how they get it done. So you don't have to actually have that much space. I've also have like a passion project on the side where I'm working with a friend and we're setting up a nature-based coaching group. And so that we literally do in 1 hour on a Friday. We have a co-working call 1 hour on a Friday, and we built a website, we're building training, and we're just doing it chunk by chunk. Yeah, I would say try and find 1 hour in your calendar where you can do one thing and get it done and see how far you get. Don't worry about trying to do everything. And probably you may need less time than you think if you break things down and you just start making progress.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's quite like a go-to. I do have a number of other tips. So if you want more, I can just keep going.
I'm sure that the audience would love more tips. Are you joking? Me too. We were talking earlier. I love it because before we started this podcast, we actually were talking a little bit about how you've decided, and I think that's so disciplined because you've decided, all right, since you're in South Africa and you do want to stay in contact with everybody and you want to join in on the meetings or whatever it is, but you're like, I have to give myself a stop, like a hard stop. You know, it's like you've got to say to yourself, I need that time for me, not work. So, and for everyone, it looks different, but how do you implement that? Do you have a calendar? Do you say, okay, you know, maybe on one day I'll take it a little further, or you kind of play with it and say, what do you do? Like, how do you give yourself the timing of?
It's a work in progress. So I reassess frequently, and I think what's working for me, what's not. At the moment, I've noticed, well, I guess a big goal for me when I was starting my own business, I wanted it to be a lifestyle business. I didn't want to be working as hard as I was in my corporate job. So I wanted to define my own schedule. And it was really important for me to spend time outdoors in nature. So that's been like top priority. And during strict lockdown in South Africa, I couldn't do that. So I ended up getting into that habit of working around the clock on weekends, but it was fun. And I say working, some of it was just Zoom calls with friends, but it was pretty much, from morning to evening, I was on my laptop mostly. So now I've had to reassess because it's summer here and we're able to get outdoors quite a lot more. But I was still in that same habit and I wasn't sleeping as well. It was harder to wake up in the mornings.
Right.
So I recently decided that a while ago, I decided to block out Thursdays in my calendar. Also, when I started coaching, it's been interesting to see. When I started coaching, I had like 7 days a week open from like 7 till 9 p.m. I was like, anytime it was anyone's coaching, I'll be available. And pretty quickly, I was like, actually, no, like no weekends. And then I decided to block out Thursdays to have that as a day off in the middle of the week. And then if something comes up, I get to choose if I want to do it or not. But I've got a full day that if I want to schedule something outdoors in South Africa, I can go and do that. And then the other thing I've done recently is blocked my calendar from, this isn't actually strictly blocked, but I try and stop work at 4 p.m.
Right.
So I can literally see then at 4 p.m., I can make the decision if I want to carry on doing something else. But I'm trying to be really strict with that. And I've been way more productive because I know I've got this like hard deadline. So it makes me really focused and dedicated while I am working. But I think it's also about knowing what you want to get done in that time. If you're clear on what needs to be done and you define that work in advance, it's much easier to focus. So it's a combination of like creating the time and defining your work.
Just knowing what you have to work on. Right. Because It's very overwhelming. And I mean, in fact, those who are going, and this is totally a technique can be applied for someone going through divorce, because in my opinion, divorce is a business and it is something that you have to get through. And there are so many action items that you have to deal with. I mean, I know, myself included, but anybody I've spoken to who's gone through a divorce, they're like, oh, every time my lawyer calls me, I feel like I'm the kid in the school that I have to do like 500 different assignments and things to do. And it is overwhelming. And I often say, I'm like, carve out a time in the day where you're going to deal with that stuff. Don't make it your whole day. I did that. I made a big mistake and I burnt out and it was really bad for me, my health and everything. And I really did start, and I'm not as disciplined. It is a practice. You have to keep practicing it. So, and if you are in that stage where, you're finalizing, separation or divorce and you're ready to, start something, or you really know that you need to, you're like, okay, maybe I won't go back to I can't do a 9-to-5 job because I have a child, but I want to do something and I have these ideas. And then that even more so, you have to figure out, like what you're saying, it's like, okay, don't be hard on myself. That's the key takeaway that I've heard from you too. It's like, it's okay if you didn't finish all of that, but you took a step forward. You did one thing out of all of that, which is, even if you did 1 out of 10, you did one. It doesn't matter, right? And don't go past that, and don't do 10 o'clock, and don't do 11 o'clock, and keep doing. I mean, I should be taking this advice 100%. No, I really enjoy what you're saying, because it can be applied to all things, especially, I mean, of course, a career and your business and divorce. I mean, for everything in life. I think setting those boundaries, for yourself we talk a lot about boundaries around other people, but it's really like setting your own boundaries for yourself.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah, totally. Your own boundaries, your own, like putting constraints in place actually gives you discipline and allows you to do more. Like, you think that if you just were like an open book, then you're being as productive as possible, but actually minimizing and like putting those boundaries, putting constraints, you can be way more focused. And then you don't get like the same kind of burnout. Like I definitely experienced now, like after that strict lockdown period where I was on my computer so much, I felt exhausted. Like, I don't want to feel this drained. So how do you conserve your energy, be more focused? And then the practical tool would be, if you're wanting to break down your work, I love it, and I know you use it in your business too, is Trello. Like, use a tool. And if you don't have that, I also use Post-it notes, like whether it's Post-it notes, Trello, and then Google has another one, Jamboard, which is the same, but actually put down the work in like a very small sheet of paper. Don't just have like endless lists. Think about these are the top things I need to do, and write it down in like little mini sentences. And that just helps you figure out, like, having your priorities on paper makes it easier to figure out what you need to do next.
So if you start off the day, do you do it that, okay, let me just write the 3 top things that I want to accomplish today, rather than, okay, let me tell you what my list is. I'm at number 42.
Oh, wow. That's
I
amazing.
have it on the last page. I have one of these. It's on ongoing. Like every time I'm like, oh, got to do that, I put it in. I mean, some of these things are done, thank God. But
Sure.
and I've tried different modalities. So what do you do that you do like, okay, I've got to, here's the 3 things I need to accomplish today, or 2 things, or whatever it is. Is that
So
better?
I start at the beginning of the week. I'd say on Monday, I use that same vision setting technique, and I think, what do I want to be celebrating on Friday? And I think of the best case scenario. And then I go back from that. I'm like, okay, what are the top things that I need to do to achieve that by Friday? And then I prioritize doing those first. So I'm always reassessing what actually needs to be done. And I also another big learning for me recently has been social media. I was just spending way too much time on Instagram, and it was easy for me to tell myself it was work. But actually, when I looked at what I was doing, it would be like, I'd put up a post, but then I would be emotionally connected to that post. So I kept checking it. And that's not adding any value to my life. So I've put a restriction on my phone as to how much time I can spend on Instagram so I can, just be more effective. But I also have been looking at what is the type of work that's really moving me forward? Do that first and start saying no to other things. So don't just have like a list of everything, because there is so much that you can do, especially with online and social media. But like, what's going to be the most effective? What's going to move me forward? Just do those things, even if it means you're not getting to everything else.
Right. It's like preserve your time and your space and everything. But I really love what you said about the Monday goal setting for Friday to celebrate.
Yeah.
Love that. Like, I mean, I love that. I honestly am going to use that for everyone, because I think that it really is. Monday is a tough day. Okay. You've had a weekend. There's so much connotation to Monday, like, oh my God, start of another week. And and we look at it as overwhelming in many ways. Even if we don't verbalize it, it's like subconsciously inside of us that we're like, oh my God. But I love that idea. Like, what do I want to celebrate on Friday? Like, that's a way better way of looking at it and saying, even if it's one thing, it's one major thing that you can just get accomplished.
No, but what will I feel so good for? Like on Friday, I'll be like, yes, this thing's done. I'll like literally be so grateful. And I do that. I journal a lot. So I'll either do that in a journal, but another way that I really love is actually drawing it. So I have this, like, just these books of white pages and markers. And I like, whether it's stick figures or mostly it's stick figures, like I don't spend a lot of time, but I draw out, how am I celebrating on Friday? And it just makes it very, very tangible and specific and real, of like, okay, these are the things that I'm really focused on. Let me do those first.
So that is amazing, actually. You should put some examples of those up, because I think that people are either visual, sometimes they're, they just need to listen to things. Everyone's got their own way that it resonates with them. I'm definitely visual, so I love that. And I would love to see that. So you definitely should put that on your social.
Okay, I'll start posting more of them. Definitely. I mean, they're so scrappy, because it is like
matter.
5 minutes long, but it brings it. Yeah,
people need to know that that's okay. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to look great. It's just that visualization actually really, really helps. There's something about it. It's like when you see a picture and it puts you in a good mood, right? There's a reason for that, right? Or you hear something and it puts you in a good mood, or whatever it is. Everybody's got their own senses of what taps into them, and it really inspires them. And so if you're looking at something, even if it's not like, Monet, like whatever it is something that is going to get you like, oh yeah, I want to feel that. I mean, I listen to music because I need to, like, there's songs that I'm like, okay, it gets me happy right away. And it reminds me that there's life outside of,
exactly.
crazy.
And I think that's it with the drawing. Also, often I'll end up drawing something that's not work related. Like, it'll, be swimming in the sea or something like that. I'll be like, okay, now I know what I need to bring in. So I have success on Monday that I've already achieved before it's Friday, because it's not just work success, it's other things that's going to make me feel really good and inspired, and like I'm really loving the life that I'm living. So you'll probably get ideas that is more than just what a good work day looks like.
No, in fact, and I know, and at work day, I guess, and anything, and even being a mom. I mean, all these rules apply to that too. I think we're really hard on ourselves as parents and as moms, especially, and especially in this environment right now, or we feel guilty because we're working, and we're not enough with our kids, and there's always never like, oh my God. So a lot of this really does apply. It's like, hey, let's first not be so hard on ourselves. B, set some goals and try to go for it. And it's okay. And hey, if your child needs you, then that's okay too. But if your business needs you, it's okay also that your child will not, they don't even remember. I mean, I spent so much, my daughter now is what, nearly 12. And I know in the beginning of her first 2, 3 years, 4 years of her life, I mean, I was very hands-on, 100% hands-on. She doesn't remember any of that. Yes, it was great, but whatever, like, all she wants to do now is not be with me and her friends she wants to be with. So yeah, it just, and now I want to be with her, so it does happen that way. And I say, there needs to be a balance in everything, and strive for that balance is, part of that is also kind of taking control of that, and setting those boundaries. And all these tips that you're giving are fantastic. And honestly, I think that there are a lot of those who are going through a divorce who really need to reinvent themselves in their career, and don't necessarily, the thought of going back into a corporate world is daunting for them, but they have great ideas. They're all business savvy. So I think that they could really use your help. I think this is it is a very daunting experience. I have been lucky enough to be an entrepreneur most of my life. So I kind of, I'm still learning. I don't know all the ins and outs, but there is a lot of people who haven't. And to get to that, like, okay, how do I even start? Where do I even begin? To go and have somebody to help them through that process, and even have a group that they can be in a camaraderie with, like, that's amazing. Honestly,
Yeah.
it's gold dust for people, and it makes them feel good,
Yeah. And I think my approach is all about like making things really simple. So it's not overwhelming. It doesn't have to, like, business doesn't have to be this hugely complicated thing. And it's overwhelming because there's so many options, and it's fairly easy to do things online now. So we feel like we have to know everything and do everything. But how do you keep it really, really simple and make it like, what are the steps that are going to be the biggest impact? Where do you start? And actually just making it real. Like, that's the most important thing. You don't have to do everything at once.
No,
So
impossible.
yeah, just like breaking it down to like be simple, tangible, and suited to you, like you're saying, because I think this is the other thing is they want to define things in their own terms, but there's not many other examples. So you can feel a lot of pressure that you're not doing this thing the same way other people are doing it.
Oh, yeah.
But it doesn't mean that it's actually even working for them. You've got to figure out what works for you.
We spent way too much time thinking about the other person. And it happens a lot. Funny enough, there's such a correlation, because it happens in divorce a lot too. It's like, well, that person got this, and that person got away, and that person's dating again, and that person's doing this, you hear it a lot. I'm like, oh, it doesn't matter. You don't even know, you can only take agency of your own life, and that's it. It's, it doesn't really matter what happens, and who knows what's going to happen after that for them. So, and how that is going, and how that is working for them,
Exactly.
And a lot of it is smoke and mirrors anyway, especially if you're getting your intel from social media. So.
Totally, exactly. Yeah, it's like you never know what's really happening, and it doesn't matter. Like, it only matters if you're happy in your own life. So just focus on that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Leigh, this has been awesome. Honestly, I love talking to you always. You're such a sunshine, a ray of sunshine. How do people get in touch with you? Because I really think there's a lot of people out there, especially a lot of women, who might even not be new moms, but they're moms, and they're gone through a divorce, and they really, they have this great idea, and they see a gap in the market. They want to start this thing. So how can they get in touch with you?
So you can find me on Instagram. I'm Biz Clarity Coach, or my website is leighwallett.com. And I've got a lot of free resources. So even on my website, if you're wanting to get clear on what your values are and what your vision is, I've got workbooks that are free on my website that you can download, and you can start asking yourself these questions. But also, if you want to get in touch, my details are on my website, or connect with me on Instagram, send me a DM. And I would love to work with people.
I'll be putting your information anyway in the feed, so no problem. But that I highly recommend it. So,
anyway. And it's been so fun. I love chatting to you too. So thanks for having me on. It's always good to catch up and hear what you're doing. And I can't wait to see your.
Yes, I know. I've been working really hard for FYI, and this is going to be an exciting, hopefully the end of 2020 will be an exciting end for us. So thank you for also the help that you've given us and just getting organized with everything too. So
My
um,
pleasure.
thank you for being here. I'm going to end it, and I will hold on, just stop there.